Soil is alive. It's truly the city that never sleeps. Millions of life forms tirelessly interacting and creating fertility in our beautiful soil. Continued life itself on this planet is utterly dependent on these microorganisms. Except, we are in danger of wrecking this underground galaxy.
Hi, I'm Henry Driver. I'm the developer of Secrets of Soil, and it's a real pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much to everyone who's watching at the moment. It's my first Amaze Festival, and it's been incredible going to the workshops, the talks, as well as also seeing these amazing experiences that everyone's created. So yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here. Secrets of Soil is a first-person interactive journey that explores the hidden world of soil and its role in combating climate change. Your journey will take you to a microscopic world, witnessing the essential life forms that live there. Through the experience, you'll explore the microscopic landscape to understand the many citizens of the soil and the essential roles that they play in this diverse ecosystem. And the aim was to inspire people to think differently about soil. You know, that the earth below our feet isn't this boring clump of mud and dirt, but it's actually this vital ecosystem, you know, brimming with life. And, you know, depending on how we work with it or look after it, it can go a long way to combating climate change. And it was inspired by my family's attempts to make their farming practices carbon negative, and to kind of work with the soil to improve how they farm. And I just thought, what do you mean work with the soil? What do you mean work with the life in the soil? And, you know, I was kind of baffled by that. And that's what led me to the John Innes Centre, which is an independent research centre for plant science and microbiology. And it was there through discussions with researchers and viewing some of their imagery that I started to get a sense of this world. And that really then inspired me to want to create my own interpretation and visualization of this world, to then bring that to audiences, to open it up and let people explore this. So through the experience, you not only meet the various life which is buried in the soil, but you also get a sense of the effects of farming on it, you know, how our food production impacts on the soil, but also how we can be better, you know, so that when the way that we farm can help us regenerate the environment with every harvest. But there's also kind of actions that you can do at the end, which are just little things that anyone can do to kind of help our soil. And as I mentioned, Secrets of Soil is freely available on Steam as a short interactive experience with a free 360-degree video version also available that will run on mobiles, tablets and browsers. And that's just about making the piece as accessible as possible in a technical standpoint, so that, yeah, if you don't have the PC which will run it, you can view it on, you know, a mobile device. The project is funded by Arts Council England and BBC Arts as part of the New Creatives programme. And I created the piece in Unity, which is where I've kind of created all of my previous kind of experimental video games. And I was the sole developer for it, creating, you know, all the designs, art, modeling, animations, sounds, as well as the majority of the programming. However, I did have Collusion to help with some of the programming, and that was then to kind of help with, say, some generative scripts, which I just didn't really have any experience in, so it was really great to hand that over and also have some support from other elements. And alongside that, I also had producers, so I had a BBC producer, Screen South producers, and Collusion producers, who then meant even though I was the sole developer, I could still then bounce ideas off prototypes and get that feedback to really try and make this piece as good as it possibly could be. I'm trained as an artist, so alongside creating experimental video games, I've also create large-scale installations and interactive artwork, say using artificial intelligence or facial tracking, as well as also kind of installations with screens and sculptures. as well as also projection. So there's a kind of a variety of projects where I can then think about where am I going to push my ideas out, or projects or themes. But right, let's get into a playthrough.
Soil. It produces 95% of our food. But what does healthy soil look like? Isn't it just rocks and dirt? No. Soil is alive. It's truly the city that never sleeps. Teeming, buzzing, evolving. Millions of life forms tirelessly interacting and creating fertility in our beautiful soil. Continued life itself on this planet is utterly dependent on these microorganisms. Except, we are in danger of wrecking this underground galaxy. But, buried within the soil, is the power to help save us from ourselves and our self-inflicted climate disaster. Explore. When you are ready to continue your soil odyssey, press the X key or button.
So this is the opening scene, and it's all about really driving home that idea of it's not this boring, bland mess. You know, that's not what soil is, but it's this universe, this cosmos of life interacting and communicating, and it's all beneath our feet this whole time. And it's a largely explorative experience. You know, your main interaction is exploring and hopefully wanting to kind of delve throughout these kind of worlds and chapters that I've created. And that's very much inspired by my early experiences of 3D video games. For example, Ocarina of Time and Mario 64. You know, I've got such amazing memories of, say, diving into paintings in Mario 64 and being transported to such these amazing different worlds. And that's something that I wanted to capture with this project, is that immersing audiences in unbelievable worlds. But rather than this being a fictional world, it actually exists. This world of life's been below our feet every single day of our lives, but we just haven't really been aware of it. And that's really that main aim of the project.
In this city of 1 trillion life forms, 1 teaspoon of soil contains 1 billion bacteria. These minuscule beings have been working their magic for 4 billion years, and yet we still have so much to learn and gain from them.
So while your main interaction is exploring, I was always thinking about, okay, well, what are the ways that I can add something on top of that? How can I create that, you know, that via movement things are changing, things are being updated by that. And as you can see, within certain scenes, there's, just via the player moving through the space, the effects and the aesthetics of each scene can change. And that's really just a kind of simple thing that I wanted to add in, so that yes, through that movement the player can then, it's changing the world. And that's both from a conceptual point in this scene, where I'm trying to help visualize the idea that there's so many bacteria in the soil, and you know, as you move, they're all just changing. I think another inspiration for the project is, I think it harks back to my youth, really. I remember as a child being really fascinated by fish tanks, and that, you know, particularly tropical ones, and then being that kind of window into another world. And I know it riffs on what I've said before. And I think that's something that I wanted to kind of hopefully bring into this piece, of that at times you could just stop and watch life just go by in this world. And that's something which I was mesmerized with, you know, fish tanks, and it's something I wanted to try and capture within this piece as well.
Bacteria break down dead plant and animal matter into essential nutrients. Nutrients which eventually refresh, restore, and revive the soil. Their magic contribution is to recycle waste and turn it into goodness. They create the womb from which new life can thrive and prosper in the cradle of the soil.
So this is one of the scenes that demonstrates some of the difficulties of this piece. And one of the main parts of that was working out scale within this world. You know, what are the scales of everything? Because, you know, you've got bacteria which scientifically are a certain size, you've got other microorganisms in the soil which are, say, this, and then you've got plant matter, you've got plant roots, and etc. And to try and bring them together into an experience which worked was a real difficulty, to kind of keep it scientifically grounded, but also to create these worlds and scenes which kind of work and exist and kind of come together quite well. So that was certainly a difficulty within the work.
Countless human lives have been saved in the past 100 years by antibiotics created from bacteria in the soil. And yet we know so little. How many other treatments and cures lie hidden and waiting to be discovered amongst the gazillions of bacterial citizens in the soil? But bacteria did not create antibiotics just for us to sort out our infections. They use antibiotics to collaborate with or destroy rival bacteria, to communicate with plants and to create pathways to move through the soil. Antibiotics are the toolset bacteria developed so that they could thrive and survive.
And this was one of the areas of research which really blew my mind. You know, that there's just so much that we don't know about the soil. So many species of life in the soil that we don't understand, or don't know about, or don't know their effects. And to kind of layer onto that the fact that so many of our antibiotics are derived from soil bacteria. So it just really begs that question of what is buried in the soil, what secrets are left there, and to think, God, we really need to look after this and further our research into this.
Life in Soil City is never quiet. It's a super fast, high capacity, 3D network where plants and bacteria message and exchange critical data with one another 24/7. Plants send out chemical signals to attract the bacteria they need to help them grow and resist harm. The bacteria provide food, antibiotics, or toxins to help the plants protect themselves. Plants, in turn, suck carbon out of the air to feed the bacteria. Like nations making trade deals, they work together so that both parties survive and thrive. But as their needs evolve, so plants hurl out urgent messages for new aid. More and more bacteria respond, and the whole network blazes into a wild symphony of interaction. Why not conduct this symphony yourself? Press the X key or button.
So throughout the piece, there's times when I'm trying to really stick to the scientific imagery and research of visualizing these life forms. But there's also times where I was, using my artistic license, but equally points when I really had to kind of imagine, okay, how can I visualize this? And this is one of the examples. We've got bacteria and plants communicating. How am I going to bring this together? And I went for the theme of having all these flashing lights of signals and particles being emitted. But it was one of the fun parts, but also difficulties of the piece.
But the bacteria are not alone. Danger lurks in the depths of the soil. Predators, such as protozoa, who come in a variety of forms. Pseudopods. Just a glimpse of those fat blow-up legs approaching is enough to scare any bacteria. Then the hairy psyllids. Smaller but no less deadly. Those vibrating hairs are like porcupine quills to bacteria. Smallest, the flagellates. Whipping along with their tails, they swarm through the soil. Protozoa eat bacteria. Try it. Maneuver the protozoa's morphing mass onto its prey. See how the protozoa suck out the nutrients the bacteria stored. So fast, so efficient. Without them, the nutrients would be trapped for ages. Instead, the nutrients are released, set free to feed the plants, liberated to enrich the soil.
So this is one of my favourite scenes, purely for that kind of interaction and the element, you know, the way that you're inhabiting the perspective of a microorganism and doing what it does and going through its life and just the kind of simple pleasure of having that feedback as you eat and devour these bacteria, to see the nutrients being released into the soil and hear the sounds that come through them. It's just a simple but fun interaction that I added into it, and I wanted to have more examples of elements such as this, but kind of through development it was just kind of difficult to include them or get them right. But it's something that for future projects and also for the kind of sequel of sorts that I'm working on, that I really want to push that increased level of interaction. Yes, to kind of keep that exploration element, but really add more interactive elements and that kind of inhabiting the perspectives of things that live in the soil.
There is more than one predator in the soil. Check out the nematodes. They eat just about everything. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, plants, and even little bugs. They're feasting, spewing out ever more nutrients to enrich the soil.
So this is one of the really early scenes that I think is one of the first ones that I kind of almost basically nearly finished, which then provided inspiration or gave me a kind of sense of how I wanted to then push the other scenes of kind of like drawing people throughout the space and kind of using sound and visuals to combine.
Healthy soil needs fungi, and fungi need food. Fungal threads spread themselves throughout the soil, creating huge, rapidly growing, intricate web-like structures. Why don't you follow them and see where it leads? Fungi are the soil's demolition crew, decomposing the toughest plant material out there. See? At the end of the trail, they deploy enzymes, helping them drain nutrients from their food.
And this is one of my favourite scenes, and it was a real joy to create. Once again, it was one of those kind of early scenes which gave me a view into what was possible and what I was trying to achieve. It's kind of the first scene where I really pushed that scale of the environment and scale of the objects, and you've got these kind of towering fungal structures where soil fungi is sucking out nutrients from, you know, plant matter. And it was a scene that I just couldn't stop adding to and wanting to kind of draw the player through you know, using different means, and just to kind of really push that explorative element. And it's a scene that I hope people will spend, you know, some time in, just looking and finding different areas of interest. And I think that's an element that I really want to then continue to push through in future developments, is that real drawing and luring the players throughout the world, but to then also give some feedback or something from that exploration, and not just only be a really interesting view. But yeah, that's something to push further.
In this densely populated city, you need friends. Fungi and plants have developed symbiotic relationships. They send requests. They barter nutrients. What the plant can't access, the fungus supplies. What the fungus can't get, the plant supplies. They are more than just good friends. See the plant calling for companionship and the fungi drawing closer. But for these two to trade, they must join forces and become one. Create bonds that cannot be broken. The fungi must enter the plant's root and create trading hubs. Let's zoom in and make this happen. Press the X key or button.
So this is one of those examples where the scale dramatically shifts from what you're viewing to when what's, you know, occurring in the next scene.
Can you see the glowing exchange points inside the root? Navigate your way through them to activate them.
You know, you go to almost a kind of molecular level of going and diving into the plant root, and to create these kind of nutrient exchange points where the fungi and the plant exchange food.
There. That's what you did. Plant and fungi merging together to create a marketplace, trading nutrients and food. Activate the other exchange points.
And this is another one of my favorite scenes, because it has that simple interaction where the audience does something, but by doing that, they change the world, the landscape. And that's something that I find really powerful within games, and I've always been inspired to include it, you know, right from, you know, not to make this a constant N64 reference point, but, you know, say in Ocarina of Time, that way that the whole world can then change. And that's something I really wanted to include within this piece, and to include more of, and there's a couple of examples throughout, but it's something I always and will keep on wanting to push, because I think that's the real power of video games, is to give the player that agency to make a change and make a difference. And I think that's what inspires me then to really create these kind of environmental artworks, which, you know, they're to do with the environment, to really, hopefully through the interactions, encourage and show, yeah, you know, that we can make a difference, that you, I, and everyone can make that difference and has that power to make a meaningful change. And that's something that I really then want to push in future projects, to kind of explore that connection.
Look at the symbiosis you have created. Plant and fungi living as one, working and thriving together. But there's more to this deal than meets the eye. Fungi repay the plants by weaving spidrous networks around the roots. Some even provide antibiotics. The strength of their bond protects them from lurking pathogens and parasites. They've gone all the way and tied the knot. They are true soil mates.
So one of the things that I was really keen on doing throughout the work was to try and make it so that each scene and chapter was really visually different, because each one is trying to show a different element of the soil and the life and what happens there, but to really emphasize that and to create it so it feels like you're always visually being kept on your toes. And this is one of my favorites from that kind of sense. You've got the plant root, and fungi then kind of wrapping itself around the roots, and they're exchanging nutrients and food. And I really enjoy the kind of visualization which I created, because it makes me laugh, because it's kind of my example. This would be what, if I had to create F-Zero, would be like, basically. So yeah, and that's kind of, particularly in this scene and other ones, it's another example of how I kind of hoping that people will explore and go throughout the space and be drawn to find out, okay, that was what was inside that root, but what's inside this plant root? And I know it's simple, but it's to try and give these just different visual cues and effects to explore and to hopefully be immersed within. Say within this plant root, I've visualized the way that the fungi and plant are combining in a slightly different way, and that was something I wanted to keep on adding in, those just different elements throughout the spaces and landscapes to hopefully draw people throughout. And that was something I was constantly trying to look for, of how can I reward the audience's exploration but do it in a way which isn't cheesy but feels linked to it. And yeah, by no means solved it or anything like that, but once again, it's one of those things that I really want to then keep on pushing and striving to be better at for the next project.
Earthworms. Healthy soil's most powerful ally. They shred huge amounts of organic matter. What goes in one end comes out the other as nutrient-rich manure, which radically intensifies the fertility of the soil. Like the enormous boring machines which drilled the Channel Tunnel, earthworms create highways for plant roots, allowing the soil to breathe, drain, and retain its nutrients. Without them, the soil would flood or dry up. They are truly the soil city's most generous benefactors.
And I wanted to include creative elements within the piece, and that was something that I had quite a few more other ideas which weren't allowed to, well, I just couldn't quite get them right. And this is just one which did get in, which is that, you're creating this kind of earthworm burrow sculpture, and this was an element which, that's where I then had that kind of programming help, because it's a generative script, and that's something I just didn't have experience in, so it was really good to be able to pass that over and get it done in a timely manner and not have to really delve into it myself, but I could then focus on other elements of the project. And it's that kind of working together as part of a team which I'm looking forward to doing in future as I kind of create bigger projects. Thank you very much for watching. That's all I'm going to show for today, but it'd be fantastic if you want to kind of dive into it yourselves. It's freely available on Steam. And as I said, there's also a 360-degree video version also available if you don't have the PC specs, and that'll run on mobile tablet and browsers. It's been great to be part of this festival. You know, it's a real pleasure to be here. And thank you very much to everyone who's watched. And, you know, if you want to get in contact or connect, then please do. There's my Twitter handle and Instagram. So, yeah, thank you very much. And, yeah, have a wonderful rest of the festival.